Update 1.21.1 didn't just bring us Onslaught Light and soon a new Steel Hunter iteration. No, it also gave us 4 new tanks for the super testers. However, only 2 have been spotted so far. And about that, if you spot them and would like to send me the replay so I can make a video on it, please feel free to join my Discord and send me a DM with those replay files. In any case, 2 tanks have been spotted, the Crusher as well as the E-77. Not E-75, almost made that mistake right here. And let's just start with the Crusher. The Crusher currently is a tier 8 premium British heavy tank, and it really is a heavy tank. Because as you can see, it has the Black Prince, let's put it that way, rollers or tracks. And that means yes, it is that slow. Then it only goes 24 kph. However, on paper, that thing looks fairly interesting. 2500 DPM, 350 damage, pretty darn good armor. But how is it when we compare it to one of the strongest Tech 3 heavy tanks in the game, being the Carnarvon? DPM, almost equivalent. Although the Carnarvon does have the benefit because, or not the benefit because it has a lower alpha. And currently, as you've heard me say in the CS52C video, I believe that higher alpha in the current meta does feel more or better to play than low alpha. The Crusher even has better gun handling during turret traverse, but it is quite a bit more inaccurate than the Carnarvon. Obviously, with higher alpha and the bigger gun caliber, we also make more damage to modules, which is pretty neat. But 10 kph slow. At least the reverse speed is the same. Ugh. And the soft stats are also the same. But again, this tank is very, very slow. So the main redeeming feature is going to be its armor. So let's just quickly compare it to the Carnarvon, which has 220 penetration, which is pretty darn okay. And you can already see the lower plate is pretty darn massive. But other than that, there are no real spots anymore except for the cupolas where the Crusher has problems with. With gold ammunition, yes, the middle of this, let's put it that way, this busty round thingy becomes a weak spot. And as you can already see, as soon as we start to side scrape in the Crusher, we tend to have issues. Because what is this? Almost 100% pen rate? Yikes, 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 yikes. Also, it has 80mm of side armor on the lower side, which is okay, and it's slightly angled inwards, as you might be able to barely see, which makes it pretty darn good, at least to try and bounce some things. But again, you can't really side scrape because you have this massive weak spot there. And as soon as people start shooting gold, you can see this weak spot becomes even bigger. Nevertheless, the armor, it looks pretty decent. Now let's just quickly compare it to the probably most hated tank in the game currently. With AP rounds, it starts to be able to overmatch this upper part here because it's just 50mm thick, and the lower plate still becomes very easy to pin. With the Shao Bao hash rounds, lower plate still is a massive issue. At least if you start to side scrape, you can probably continue to hide it and you can use your turret and only the cupolas become an issue, but this still here is quite a big issue. So it looks like the Crusher is not going to be a BZ killer. Because the BZ is simply that strong and it's so frustrating to play against. I already had my get together with this tank again after coming home from Tankfest, and I hate it still. But nevertheless, I would say the Crusher, at least on paper, again, those are still paper stats and it's still in the super test phase, so subject to change, at least on paper, except for the very slow movement of the tank, it looks decent. It might even, I might even would say it looks fun and interesting to play. But we don't know yet what Wargaming is planning to do to this vehicle, so we'll see sooner than later. Then we have the E-77, and the E-77 definitely also looks very interesting on paper at least. Plus I have to say, this tank looks, how should we say, kinda sexy. It looks pretty darn good. Or what do you think? It looks slick, it looks very dynamic, at least from the looks of it. I also think that this tier 9, currently premium German heavy tank, may or may not be for the Halloween event, because we have this Waffenträger van Krieger person, which, you know, he's a very German guy, so obviously he's trying to want to have a very German tank on as his steed, you know? So I believe this might be a pretty good tank for this event. But enough is enough, let's have a look at this stats so you know what you need to look out for. Only 460 alpha, okayish DPM would say, pretty decent mobility, okayish accuracy factors, and the armor is quite whack. But let's compare it to the E-75 so you can compare it to a tank which basically everybody knows and currently also a lot of people like. The E-75 definitely is a tank which many people love. So the DPM is actually a little bit higher, but the E-75 does have the benefit of having 70 damage per shot more. As far as I'm aware, the pen rates are equivalent, which is pretty good to know. The E-77 does have better accuracy, slightly worse aim time, but that was offset by the better accuracy, and quite a bit better accuracy on the move. Well, not on the move, but during turret traverse, which is pretty darn nifty. Mobility, exactly the same, except for the HP to ton ratio being 5 more, which is pretty stout, I would say. You can see it here, the effective speeds become quite a bit better on hard stats being 60 kph higher, on soft stats being 2 kph higher, medium stats, and on soft stats being 5 kph, 8 kph higher. The main problem will be the hit points, 150 less, and the armor. So let's just compare the armor values. Nope, we are not going to go for premium rounds just yet. But you could already see, already with AP, the tank has a very unique armor layout, with the hull being fairly weak and the turret being fairly strong except for the cupola, which is fine. Again, it feels, I guess, a little bit like the T110E5 in that regard, you know? You have the big cupola, if you can hide it, you have a pretty darn strong turret. And you might even be able to side scrap quite a bit, 80mm of side armor, fully flat, meaning you can use that to your advantage. And look at that, 160mm side turret armor. That means quite a lot of people will be probably catched off guard if you try to side scrape and try to shoot here. Always the cupola and the eyes exist. If we then start to use gold ammunition, yeah, we start to have an issue. The hull is weak, again 135, and you can see it only really makes or gets a decent chunk of armor because of its very steep slopes. But it's a little bit like the Gonkiewicz, the tier 9 Polish heavy TD. It's good against standard rounds, but as soon as people start to shoot premium rounds, the armor becomes more or less obsolete. But at least the turret front is still very thick, 290mm, and it has additional angles, giving us pretty decent effective armor. But if somebody shoots gold ammunition, you have to abuse your 8 degrees of gun depression. So that is pretty nutty. Now I quickly want to compare it to the A Phase 1, just because I want to see what the heat does to this vehicle. And oh yeah, I see. The heat, yeah. Even when you go full hull down, the 340mm of heat penetration is going to ruin your day. But I would say the E-77 looks fairly interesting. At least on paper, I would say currently it might be a fairly interesting vehicle and fun to play. But, important, these stats are still subject to change. Keep that in mind. I just purely want to give you an overview, so if you fight those vehicles currently, that you know what you need to do and you know how to abuse their weaknesses. And with that, I would say we have everything done for this video. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about those two vehicles, and again, don't forget to join my Discord so you are able to help me out finding some replays, which makes those videos come out a lot quicker and a lot earlier. My name is RagingRaptor, and I'll see you around. Cheers.